President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who is marking 2 years in office, says his administration has been marked by bold economic reforms, security challenges, and governance restructuring. According to the statement released by presidential spokesman Bayo Onanuga, the administration had made significant strides in economic stabilization, security, and governance reforms. Here are some key highlights of the statement.
Well, taking a look at the highlights of the statement's economic reforms, in particular, where we're going to start from, talked about the removal of fuel subsidies and unification of foreign exchange rates, were described as necessary steps to prevent a fiscal crisis. Concerning the second aspect, which is infrastructure development, the administration has approved major road rehabilitation projects under tax credit schemes, allowing private companies to contribute to national infrastructure. And not forgetting, too, we can also look at the security improvements. The government claims that military operations have significantly reduced insurgency threats in the northeast, with a reported decline in terrorist activities as well.
Despite these claims, many Nigerians insist they have continued to grapple with economic hardship, insecurity, and governance concerns. Join us this morning to further get an assessment of President Tinubu's performance 2 years since assuming office as Publicity Secretary of the APC, Mr. Felix Morka. A warm welcome to you, Mr. Morka. Thank you very much for joining us on Breakfast Central this morning. Now, Mr. Morka, our correspondents felt the pulse. They were on the streets of different parts of the country to mark the second-year anniversary of the Tinubu administration. And what the president and his economic team are saying seems to be different from the voices on the streets. I believe Nigerians' biggest concerns right now, from the sample size and from the people we spoke to, is the cost of living and, of course, staple food too. So how do you juxtapose both of them? The administration says they've achieved significant economic reforms, and ordinary Nigerians are saying, look, we're yet to feel the impact. What are your comments on this, sir?
What you describe on the side of the government and on the side of our people are not mutually exclusive. Each one side, I think, hold their positions, maybe validly and justifiably. It's not often, not even in the advanced world, in advanced economies, do you have, that, I think, parallel where, governments and the people, or that convergence rather, where government and the people, agree on, I think, their own assessment of the situation. The government may do all in its powers to make life, good for our people. Some people may still feel like it's not enough. Again, government's output and performance and delivery can never be enough. No matter what you do, people still are, I think, free and entitled to expect more. And government is under duty to do more at all times. That's why we have government. That's why we have also, we go from one government to the other. But the fact of the matter is that, anyhow you look at this government, you cannot help but acknowledge that the government has done well. Done well, by so many standards. If you want to look at it from the point where this government was inaugurated, or for that matter, if you want to take the performance of this government within the historical context of Nigeria, any which way you look at it, I think that any reasonable, fair assessment would agree that this president is indeed a president of progress. Now, again, this is comparable to really renovating a house. I don't want to say constructing a house, but renovating any structure, especially when that renovation extends to, the structures of the building. The Nigerian state, the economy of our country, was in deep rot for a long time. For a long time. a period that covers the service of several presidents in our country, because some of the deep problems that needed to be tackled were left untackled. All we got from many previous presidents were simply token gestures. Take the fuel subsidy you referenced. Look, virtually every president that has come along in recent history actually tampered with that system of fuel subsidy, which is why fuel was not selling at the price it sold in 1999 when the civil dispensation was inaugurated, and the time that even President Buhari took power. You could tell that petrol had gone from point A to point B in that spectrum of time. So what it meant was that previous presidents actually did remove fuel subsidy to minuscule degrees. And those were done as reactionary and, if you will, some momentary treatment of the problem that was still sitting there. The big elephant remained in the room. None of these previous presidents had the political will to confront that problem and to transform it. This president came along, decided that this problem we have been romancing all these decades, that really has kept our country down and denied us the opportunity to flourish and to grow and to thrive as a country, as a people, that he needed to solve it. Now, let me say that this president was not unaware that that decision, including the decision to also float Naira and seek a market-determined value for our currency, in order for us to be in that place where people will find us attractive to come to invest in our country. He knew that those were not going to be popular decisions. And because the potential unpopularity of those decisions were, in fact, the reasons the previous presidents didn't go there. Because nobody wanted to, put their electoral calculations at stake. But this president said, look, the need to save our country and to fix our economy at its roots trumped his own electoral calculation. So which is why when he said on day one, fuel subsidy was gone, he knew exactly the implication of what he had done. He knew that that was going to, really earn him some backlash. But that did not deter him, because that's what leaders, real leaders, that is what they do. They take decisions if they are convinced in the ultimate good that that decision will promote. So, look, if you look at it, we're on our way. The signs of recovery, of a rebounding economy are everywhere. All the data you look at suggests that our country is, the foundation of our economy is recovering and rebounding and now positioning to support, more sustainable growth, going forward. And I think that is at the macroeconomic level. Microeconomics, what you were referring to about, our people and their, reviews and their position. Some of our people, yes, they have a right to, express those, views, because indeed there has been some, increase in the cost of living for everyone. But those are anticipated, collateral impacts of this pilot, major reforms that this president, introduced. It was expected.
And what has been done to ease the burden of this collateral effect of the subsidy removal? Because prices have skyrocketed across all sectors. I believe we're having connection issues with the APC Publicity Secretary, Mr. Felix Morka is back. Mr. Morka, just before we lost connection there, I said, what measures, the burden of these decisions, these hard decisions that, even the people that the president was campaigning against did say they were going to remove subsidy. But But what has the government done to ease the burden from the people? And why is it that it's the people that have to, you know, absorb some of the shocks?
Look, always when you make policies and policies are implemented, policies that are aimed to correct some distortions in the economy necessarily will have impact on, you know, the people. Most times, everywhere in the world, it will have impact. You know, now these impacts are being managed and being managed sensibly. You know, we have a population of nearly 230 million or 250 million, depending on who you're talking to. That's a lot of people. This government is doing everything to mitigate on the impacts of this, you know, twin policies. For instance, you know, there's been a massive uptick in social investments, the delivery of, you know, food and, you know, cash transfers to the most vulnerable people in our country. The government also, realizing the impact of these policies, negotiated with labor to increase the minimum wage to our people. Government is, again, being attentive to the need to preserve the opportunities for the education of our children. Also designed and launched the NEL Fund, providing, you know, loans to our students to study who otherwise will not have, you know, the means to pay their fees in school. You know, again, in the area of transportation, which is a critical area that's heavily impacted by the removal of fuel subsidy, the government has come up with, you know, again, the delivery of, you know, buses and the entire CNG program, which, again, we haven't seen before. These are initiatives that, you know, I mean, government is thinking ultimately will help to ameliorate the, you know, transport situation for our people so they can get from one place to the other relatively, you know, affordably. Now, somebody may ask, but look, this is not available everywhere. Yes, it's not available everywhere. That's to be considered. But that's also understandable given that this is a fresh program that the government has just launched. And it's very infrastructure intensive. Time is required to build all of the facilities, just like a gas station, so that people can, you know, I mean, just dash in and dash out, buy a CNG, power their vehicles, you know, more cheaply, and of course, more, you know, in a more environmentally friendly manner to move around. But, you know, so all that I think the government is saying is that our people need to be, you know, just patient so that all of these innovative, you know, measures that government is putting in place will ultimately come to its, you know, fullness and then begin to transfer those benefits to more of our people. Farmers are getting, you know, a lot of support, whether it's in terms of fertilizers, in terms of access to, you know, small credit, in terms of access to machines. They are getting, you know, I mean, some of those inputs that we hope will enable them to, I think, you know, ultimately, you know, produce more efficiently and, you know, grow food and push us towards more food security. So there's a whole lot of micro level interventions that this government is put in place. That we're hoping, you know, again, we begin to, you know, help our people to recover from the shocks of this, you know, policies.
All right. Mr. Morka, I think just going into the next level of this interview, I'm just going to ask questions because what we've been able to do is I've been able to pick the top key questions, especially from Nigerians. Having known that you would be on this show, they've sent in their questions, and that's exactly what we're going to ask to you. Coincidentally, you've touched on some of them. So I'm going to start off first with the minimum wage. I don't know if you're aware that a lot of persons in different parts of the country are not being paid the exact minimum wage that has been approved by the president. That's one. And if you are not aware, well, this is a platform for us to also share that some are even earning way below the former minimum wage. And they've also said that it seems like some of these actions taken by the current administration is a beautiful bride on paper, but it does not translate to the real life, what's going on, especially with people. So what's your take on that, especially looking at one, the minimum wage, two, I also like you to touch on the CNG. You mentioned that it's going to take time. Do you think this administration has enough time to implement that? 2 years to go. Or is that the more reason why many feel governance has stopped and focus is on 2027? So these are two questions I've been able to pick from a long list. Let's look at the minimum wage. It's not impacted. And secondly, CNG. I mean, within this act is just one, catering to a lot of areas, neighborhood, and so on. And how would that help the average Nigerian who's still paying very costly price for transportation?
Thank you very much. Now, on minimum wage, now what the federal government has done in collaboration with labor is to determine that basic minimum, on top of which, more may be added even for the least paid work in the country. Now, I can tell you that, all of those who are on the federal payroll, I think are already receiving this standard of, payments for quite some time. I also know that many state governments and their employees have also worked out figures, sometimes in excess of, the wage that's been declared by the, federal government. I know that, a couple of states may be struggling with that. I quite frankly, I can't tell you which states now, but I know that, yes, I hear complaints that, a couple of places that the minimum wage has yet to be implemented. Now, again, most of those you probably are referring to who may be making this complaint are not people who are, in federal or state employment. I know that I hear that quite a bit for those in the private sector or in, parts of the informal sector who are, really outside of the, command and control system of, either the federal government or the state government. But all of those employed in the states and the federal system are, I think, receiving this benefit already. But I think that this is where, a democracy works like it works. You don't expect that the federal government is going to wake up tomorrow morning. The government is making all the appeals, encouraging the private sector to, align with this, priority and to help our people to earn more so they can mitigate on the impact of this transient policies. But I think that it's hard for the government to go from one company to the other, beating them over the head with a stick, to compel them to pay. I think, again, this is where citizenship and patriotism, is called in, because, those who work for you, even as a private company, again, need to, be enabled to do their job, and transportation, food, and providing the basic necessities, by an increased, margin in salary, will of course help them to be more efficient, more committed, really beneficial for the employers of labor, whether on the government side or the informal sector, to do more for these workers who again I think are the receiving end of some of these impacts. But let me.
Mr. Felix, are you there? Okay, it seems to be a...
having some structural, I think, repair to the foundations of our economy. You see, those who are on fixed wages are those who really suffer the most all the time. Because while your salary is, pegged at 100,000, inflation takes away a lot of that, value. And, meanwhile, salary increase does not rise as quickly as, that trend of inflation. And then, of course, part of the problem we have in the economy and in any transiting economy is that, there's excess labor in the labor market. So the employer is aware. When you tell the private employer to hire a security man, for instance, that's getting paid 35,000 instead of at least, 70,000, He says, look, well, if he doesn't want to take 35,000, he can go or hire somebody else, because he has confidence that there are people out there who are unemployed, for now, who, from where he may, get a replacement. But see, what this president is doing, and the calculation is that as the economy rebounds, more investments, more, foreign investments, domestic investments begin to come in. As the economy expands, which is already expanding, what you find is that the excess labor in the market will become gainfully, pulled into the productive sector. And that will make the labor market thinner, forcing even the most miserly employer in the private sector, in the informal sector, to, see that he must, retain his workers by increasing wages. Those are the last to benefit. Those who benefit today, who are already benefiting, are those who are producing value, whether they're growing crops or, selling produce or providing services. Those are able to make adjustments in their income and in their intake, so that, they are able to, prosper even under, this transitional period. So, we hope that private sector people will, I think, help government and help our people to follow this.
All right, Mr. Felix Morka. Mr. Felix Morka, I mean, I'm sure you're also aware that the current inflation rate stands at 23.71%. So if we're throwing it to the private sector, where they have to, there's electricity tariff that has gone on. The private sector have to pay for that. There's fuel subsidy, and diesel has gone up, as well as, premium motor spirit. There's also the companies are also distressed with the current taxation, which they have to also, multiple taxation they have to deal with, all of these. And then we're looking at them also employing and paying 70,000. But that's a conversation we're going to have. We'll continue this conversation. Please bear with us. We'll have to go on a quick break. When we come back, we'll look at other aspects and areas as we assess 2 years in office of Nigeria's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Stay with us. Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us here on Breakfast Central. We are indeed assessing and taking a look at the scorecard of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's 2-year in office. And of course, we have Mr. Felix Morka, who of course has been speaking to us about the entirety of what the 2 years looks like as we look into another 2 years to come ahead, basically. So right before the break, we were discussing about the hardship that Nigerians are faced with. And I'm going to go back to my question. I mean, I did ask about the CNG. The president had promised that buses would be, evenly distributed. Nigerians would not have to pay so much for transportation. We're going to 3 years, because whether we like it or not, today marks a new start to another year. And we've not seen these CNG buses. We've not seen Nigerians shouting for joy that their sufferings has been alleviated. Does it seem like there's a lot of promises made, but fulfilling these promises are far-fetched? Or do you think that the administration is chewing on too much that they can swallow?
Mr. Morka, could you
Morka, did you get my question?
I believe your device is on mute, your audio. Thank you, sir.
Yes. Yes. If you can tell me, yes. I think the government is doing exactly what it said it would do with respect to the CNG rollout. As I indicated earlier, the CNG, just like filling stations around the country, are mostly private investments. The private people who bring their money to build filling stations around the country, in the neighborhoods. They do that. What government has done is to create this facility and to make available this system of energy to power our vehicles. Government itself is providing buses and helping private individuals to fit, even delivering free kits to individuals who are interested to convert their vehicles to be CNG compliant, if you will. Now that is going on, but I think that for a country as large as we have, for over 200 million people, it takes some time for even the best effort to become noticeable. Those buses, if they're made in Nigeria, they still need to be made. If they're imported, they still need to be imported. Anyhow, that, these are physical, things that require time and some coordination to deliver. Private individuals, I know individuals, for instance, who are, doing feasibility studies for, setting up, CNG stations. I think that, we've had gas all along in the history of our country, since probably the, early years of our country. We've had, natural gas, but no government before this one ever considered the prospect or even possibility of, putting this to use, to domesticate it the way this government is trying to do. You see, look, I understand, and nobody denies that CNG is not available on the scale that we would like to see it, become available. But that process is already underway. And I think that with time, we will see more availability of these buses, even private vehicles. But let me also say this. The last time I was in your studio in Lagos, I was having a conversation with some of your people. And, we were remarking, and I think everybody agreed that even now, there's as though they are, they're powered by petrol. They still give the excuse that fuel is high, even when the, source of energy in the vehicle is CNG. So, look, there's also a moral question that is raised here that we all need to wrap our minds around and figure out ways of, also getting our people. If you are powered on CNG, then your transport should not be anywhere near what those who are running on fuel are, charge. So look, there's a responsibility for all of us. It's not just government. We almost do our part. And yes, government, I think, takes the flag, and maybe rightfully so. But I think that as a people too, we must, not make things more difficult for our neighbor, especially where we have access to what government has provided to make things easier for us.
Thank you, Mr. Morka. Let's talk about security. I mean, it's one of the most important elements, because without security, no country can function. All the businesses and things we've been talking about won't exist. Mr. President is the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Nigerian Armed Forces. And we've recently, in the last 2-3 months, seen an uptick in violence in the northeast and also in the middle belt and plateau and parts of Benue. What would you say is responsible for this? And this seems to have put a dent in the security records of the Tinubu administration. What assessment was made, and what will be done to ensure that security incidents like this minimize? I also want you to speak to the fact that some people believe that the president is not sensitive to matters of insecurity. It was away in France when we had that very dastardly act in Bokos in Plateau State, and others felt he should have cancelled his working visit and come back to Nigeria. How do you respond to this two questions?
Let me start with the last part of your question. I think that the president of the Federal Republic is the president, wherever he is, anywhere he is. His authority to govern is not diminished by distance, because part of his responsibility also, extends to, travels and, conducting, foreign policy and foreign engagements that sometimes also, hinge on the need to mobilize interest and support and investment in our country. So those trips are not just, they're not pleasure trips. There's trips that are sometimes very beneficial. Some of the, I think, value we are now seeing in, people coming with, investments to Nigeria, has to do with some of those, trips where agreements are reached and deals are struck and benefits, ultimately flow to our economy. So let's not diminish it as though it's not important. I think it's important. Yes, the security of our people is also paramount. I think no government trifles with that. No government that is, serious will, I think, play hokey pokey with, the lives of our people. And this government certainly is not the one that will take, security lightly. And everything this president has done, from providing our troops with the kind of support that we haven't seen before, from providing moral support, even extending to paying off things that have to do with insurance for our troops, who, by the way, are doing a fantastic job. I think we need to acknowledge what the government is doing. Now, it's in the equipment. Government is providing equipment to this, troops to, strengthen them and make them even more effective in combating this evil that, we have attacking us. But you must also understand that the war on terror and even banditry, these are asymmetrical war. They're not, your conventional warfare where, our army will simply acquire a target and take it down. These are shadowy figures, heavily, I think, just driven by evil, by a commitment to do maximum damage. These are people who simply blend in with our population. They strike opportunistically and disappear into the forest or wherever it is they hide out. So, and whatever drives them, whatever the motivation is, whether it's money or ideology, some devious ideology or whatever that drives them, it drives them. But take in the figures. Over 13,000 of them have been killed, neutralized, over the last 2 years. Over 18,000 or so, arrested, captured, and demobilized. A lot of hostages released, nearly 10,000. Now, imagine that. Now, if these figures are coming out of the, those who are attacking our peace and security, then it means that, there's something else going on. And government is trying to figure that out. Because, the more you take them out, neutralize them, it appears that they go regroup and then, come back. But we must not forget that this is not an exclusive Nigerian experience. All of our neighboring countries are also going through the same thing. And we are the biggest, country in this neighborhood. So if things are happening in small countries that don't nearly have the kind of resources we have, you can imagine what the incentive for this, terrorists to even cross the borders to do exploits and return. Our borders are also very long and open. We don't yet have the opportunity, like the U.S. president, to build a wall to better secure our borders. So again, collaboration with our neighbors is has been the best alternative that we have to secure our borders and deny these insurgents and terrorists free passage. But make no mistake, our armed forces are doing a heck of a job, and I think we need to support them more. We need to pray for them, because it's not easy to be in the front lines of defending our freedoms. It's not. And I think that when we cast and frame this debate, I would recommend that we preface it with some tribute to those who are fighting this war, because we all can speak all we want, we can analyze insecurity all we want, but for those who are in the front line, who are dealing with these bullets flying up and down, whether from their guns or from the guns of the enemies, it's not easy. That is a demonstration of ultimate patriotism, and we need to salute their courage and service.
Territorial integrity, and also many have lost their lives in the line of duty. I also want to comment on the increment. It happened under the Tinubu administration of the daily feeding allowance of members of the armed forces. It was 1,000 naira, I believe, or 1,005. It's now 3,000 naira a day, and some have said, it's still grossly inadequate for men that carry 50 kg gear and have to risk their lives. But because of time, let's move on to another issue. It's been 2 years, half time on this administration, and the president took some bold policy moves, which many commentators have commended. They say we've been postponing doomsday in the past. It had to happen. Subsidy was removed. We had the unification of the exchange rate, which had shocking effects on the economy. And the presidency and its handlers, that's what led to the rolling out of CNGs. There were palliative measures. Some have said many Nigerians have not felt the effect. But beyond the palliatives, the president, I remember Mr. President's speech, he said we should tighten our belts. This is a sacrifice for better Nigeria. It's 2 years now. When, Mr. Morka, when do we begin to see some of these policies come to fruition? When do we have a better standard of living, and when will this cost of living burden ease from Nigerians?
Well, the worst is behind us, to use the words of Mr. President. The worst of this moment is already behind us, and right now things are beginning to look up. I am sure you will acknowledge that there's been some, noticeable reduction in the price of food. Maybe not on all commodities, but in some of the basic staple, we're seeing, some downward slide, and we're hoping that trend will continue into the future, and come down some more. Feel more at ease to afford their basic necessities. That's the intention of government. And as the economy expands, as it's already now expanding, we're also going to see more, employment opportunities, come about. More people leaving the, labor market, get hopefully, a fair wage for their labor. Now, it is hard to put a calendar time to when, Uhuru will be with us. Just like in countries where, this transition was made, even, the big China, there was no calendar time. There was nobody in China who said, this is the date. Let's, count down to that date when everything will be fine. It's about progressive realization of the objectives of the reform. It is progressiveness. You can see all of the indicators looking up. Financial Times just, a couple of days ago did an editorial where they said that, look, a lot of people haven't even noticed that Nigeria has not only turned the corner, but is beginning to look good. And all of a sudden, the population of this country, these 230, 40 million people, as a market, is now beginning to, I think, become, self-evident to investors that, look, this is a place you can take your money and have a foreign exchange system that is reasonably predictable, have, the fundamentals, fiscal policy that makes sense, that, supports development. I mean, it was our brother, Mr. Femi Otedola, the other day, who was, speaking and celebrating the reforms of this administration, how the reforms, gave him the courage to invest about 350 billion, if I'm not mistaken, in the First Bank. Now, that expansion, or that investment in the First Bank, not only will help that bank to consolidate, giving job security to those who are already employed, but also may, help employ a few more people in the bank, just like other companies are receiving these investments and also expanding. So the measure of success is progressive. It's not, by the calendar. And I think that that's true of any other country, whether it's Singapore or Malaysia, any country that has, evolved from, this struggle to a place now where they are more, comfortable and growing their economies. I think that it is, a progressive process. And I think that we need to not, make our people feel like because we don't have a date set, therefore, all of this is for nothing.
But
I think it's for something.
But the worry, but there's a cause for worry, because now that we are depending on time, we all know that time waits for no one. And for those on the other end, talk about the Nigerians who are feeling the brunt. They wouldn't want to really hear that we don't have time, but we are certain that it will work. Remember, the president has just 2 more years in office, except we're saying that everything governance has stopped, just like what we've seen in the political landscape, where politicking is now the focus, because it's starting to look so like everything concerning governance and catering to the needs of the Nigerians is at a certain level, while the focus is we must get the president. We must get the president the next term. Is that what it means now? So Nigerians should just wait first, give us time. Let's focus on getting the president going. Mr. Felix, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. You are playing on words, and I don't think that that's necessarily helpful.
No, I'm asking a question, because you're saying time, I mean, you've mentioned, let me reiterate so that we're clear.
No, I heard you.
You said there's time.
Let me speak.
Nigerians
Look,
are saying how long a time?
I understood your question and I answered your question, but for the purpose of emphasis, let me say that no one has abandoned governance. The president and his entire team, and even the state governors are hard at work addressing all of the problems that we have been discussing. Nobody has taken their eyes off the ball. But we're in a democracy where people who are in government, who are politicians, also must engage one way or the other in that democratic activity. The fact that you're president doesn't mean that when you have your NEC meeting, you shouldn't attend your NEC meeting. Or when you have a national summit meeting, you shouldn't attend your national summit meeting. How many minutes does it take? At most, an hour, 2 hours of time does not do nothing to take away the focus of government on on governance. And besides, the bureaucracy they're not participating in politics. They're there. That's their job, irrespective of the identity of the government in power. Those in the bureaucracy are there permanently implementing policy and carrying out activities of government. Look, let me come back to the issue of time, because you make it sound like the government does not know what timelines. I said to you, look, Nigerians are discerning people. Let's not present Nigerians like they don't think. Nigerians are thinking people, and they are smart people. They understand this conversation more than you think. So when you frame it and you try to speak about time as though somebody is saying, oh, this is going to be an indefinite thing. I already told you that some of the benefits of these policies are already with us as we speak. They're beginning to have impact. And I think I gave you, some of the examples that I gave. So the point is that, like CNG, I told you, CNG will be available ultimately. Look, and this is just midterm. In the fullness, even of this first term of this president, I believe that if we have this conversation, close to the end of the 4-year term of this president, maybe your question will not be as you are framing it. You may be a bit more, I think, accepting that CNG buses and vehicles and service stations are more available now. Maybe still not to the extent that we would like, because nobody said that in a term of a president to 4 years, and that of the governors as well to 4 years, local government maybe 3 years. There's a reason for that. And understanding that you may introduce policy that even you may not finish. Look at the Eco-Atlantic city, the whole reclamation of the ocean in Lagos that has saved that city from the perennial affliction of massive erosion, destruction. It was conceived by this president when he was governor. But till today, generations of governors have continued to implement that project. That is what government is supposed to be. Government is not an activity, it's a process. So look, I think we need to, again, speak about these things in a way that helps our people to get a perspective that enables them to understand what's going on and to, prepare themselves as citizens to government, but also, yes, critique government where they need to critique government and make suggestions, which government has a duty to listen to. But I think that we shouldn't, say that because nobody's telling you by the 12th of July next year, everything will be fine. Is that what you want to hear? Well, if that's what you want to hear, I'm not able to give that, timeline. All I know is that this government is committed to using its facility to actually deliver all of the promises it's made. And that's what is going on. And I think that there's global acknowledgement that this government growing the economy at nearly 3.8%, in the last quarter of last year. That is phenomenal. There are many developed countries today that are not growing their economies by even 1%. So look, I think we need to, also celebrate the accomplishments while we are preparing to do more to achieve all of the other goals that this government has set.
Now, Mr. Felix Morka, just before we wrap up this conversation, yesterday also marked 10 years of the All Progressive Congress continuous stay in office, 2 years of President Tinubu and 8 years of former President Muhammadu Buhari. And if you look back at the PDP years, if you look at the metrics, the economy and other things, many Nigerians will say, look, the naira to dollar rate, and so many other issues. Also, it looks like those were very good times. As we inch towards the 2027 elections, as we've entered, like my colleague said, the third year of this administration, what should Nigerians look out for? And are you hopeful? And should they be hopeful?
I'm very hopeful. We at the All Progressives Congress are very hopeful, and I know that many Nigerians are very hopeful. But let me speak to this cross-reference that's made very often, but it's also a very not a very accurate, I think, depiction of the story. Now, you say that under the PDP years, naira was, maybe, I don't know what it was.
The price of commodities, fuel,
bag of rice was cheaper.
You said we don't have time. I understood the question, but you're taking my time. Let
no
me
problem.
just
go ahead. We're just highlighting.
Yes, look. Now, in those years, all that government did and government had to do was simply dictate the value of the naira. That was the policy. Government, central bank will simply wake up in the morning and say that naira today will exchange for 200 naira to $1. And then, even when that was not the value of the naira, government and the CBN defended that value that they had declared by pumping our scarce resources into that system, wasting our national resources defending our currency. And then that way you can import things at that rate that is dictated, that is not market determined, right? Now, yes, in that moment, you go out to the fuel, you want to buy, a bag of rice, they tell you it's this amount. But rice for a long time was imported into this country. A lot of the rice we ate was imported through the years of the PDP. It is only in the Buhari years that a committed effort was made to begin to encourage our farmers to grow rice, for example. Now, what I'm saying is that when this government came along and did what everyone, even those who competed for that office of president, agreed had to be done to harmonize the dual exchange rate, that created an opportunity for mad corruption and exploitation, where somebody will give somebody $1 million at 460 naira at the time that this president took over, and then turn around and sell and round trip that money for 900 naira to $1 and make over 100% profit without leaving their bedroom. You see, this casual cross comparison between those years and now is a false comparison. Yes, the figures, you can't question them because that was but the explanation is in the fact that the value of the naira at that time was set arbitrarily. And that was why we didn't have meaningful investment.
Yeah, but the cost,
people didn't want to
I
pay
really
money
wish we had time. The cost of living.
Somebody else was making the money. So, that's exactly what was going on at the time. So it wasn't because today anybody has done anything wrong or that this government is not doing enough. It's because this government is trying to strengthen the economy, position the country to grow exponentially going forward. That's the difference.
Thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, Mr. Felix Morka, Publicity Secretary of the All Progressive Congress. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.